Hello everyone. I'm Amy from King Arthur Flour, and this is my daughter Grace, and welcome back to our kitchen. So we have all been home for many weeks. I hope everyone is doing okay and taking care of yourself and taking care of each other. We're going to be baking again today. So today the recipe we're going to be making is called Gael's Saturday Focaccia. So focaccia is a light bread. It's kind of similar to pizza dough, but with herbs and olive oil on top, and it's delicious. With all the recipes that we're making, you can always find the link to that recipe in the post for this video, all right? So, into focaccia. This is something where a lot of people and their families may have their own recipe, so you might have your own recipe for focaccia. We're gonna try this one, and you can make your own, but hopefully some of the skills that we're gonna review today will help you. So the first thing we're gonna do is we got ready to bake, so we got out all our ingredients, washed our hands, pulled our hair back, read our recipe through a couple of times. We've preheated our oven, so we have everything ready. The first thing we're gonna add is 2 cups of warm water. So just to remember, when we're making bread and we're using yeast, we want our water to be warm and just comfortable. It does not need to be too hot or too cold. Then here, Grace is going to put in 3 things. We have a tablespoon each of sugar, salt, and yeast. So 1 tablespoon sugar, tablespoon salt, and a tablespoon of yeast. Why don't you go ahead? If you have a packet of yeast, that packet is 2 1/4 teaspoons. A tablespoon is 3 teaspoons. So I've already checked with our baker's hotline. So if you only have a packet of yeast, that will be fine. You might just need to give it a little more time to rise, okay? So we're gonna put that in. The next ingredient we're adding is 1/2 cup of semolina flour. So semolina is made from durum wheat. It is a kind of flour, it's just a different kind of wheat. This is really common in Italian cooking, and sometimes you will see semolina used to make your own pasta. So if you can find this, that's great. If you can't find it, you can go ahead and just use all-purpose flour. The semolina is going to add a little bit of flavor, a little bit of texture to our focaccia. If you wanted to try substituting 1/2 cup of wheat flour, whole wheat flour, I think that would be just fine too. So we're going to pour that in there. Want to mix it for me? All right. So we're just going to mix this in until it's combined. And get everything together. And that's kind of giving our yeast a chance to kind of get started. All right. Perfect. All right, next we're gonna add 4 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour. So remember, I feel like you and I are like dancing in the kitchen. We're gonna measure our flour by fluff, sprinkle, sweep. So we get our flour nice and loose and mixed up. We sprinkle it in until it's overflowing. We got all bits of our measuring cup full, and then you can level it off with a knife, with any flat surface. I have a tool called a dough scraper that I really like, and I like to use that. So we'll measure that in. So that's 1. Do you want to do the rest?
Sure.
All right, so I did 1, so you do 3 more, and then I'll do the half, because we need 4 1/2. This is where you get to practice fractions when you're baking. All right, you go ahead. So I know it is still hard for some of you to find flour in your grocery stores right now. And please know that at King Arthur, again, we're just working as hard and fast as we can to get everything to you so that you can bake. But if you don't have these ingredients right now, that's okay. You can still watch the video, still enjoy it, and then when you do get flour in your house, you can go ahead and give it a try. But I am hoping that through these videos, especially if you're a new or first-time baker, you're learning some of the skills and understanding why we use certain ingredients the way they do, so that when you do get to make the recipe, you feel comfortable and really informed. All right, so Grace is measuring our flour.
Right.
I think so, yes.
I did 1, and this is 2.
You're supposed to help me count. It's hard for me to pay attention. All right, while she's doing that, I'm gonna be mixing this in. Just a little bit, because I still have a few more things to add. So while Grace is doing that last cup of flour, I'm gonna scooch behind her. I'm gonna get 2 more ingredients. I'm doing a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then you can do 2 to 3 tablespoons of herbes de Provence. So herbes de Provence is a very fancy term for a lot of herbs that have been mixed together. So you can buy this mixed in your grocery store. It has so many things in it: thyme, marjoram, sage, lavender, oregano. So if you have this in your store, great. If not, just mix your own spices together. Maybe you have a pizza blend you want to use. It would all be fine. So we're going to put in 2 tablespoons of that.
It actually has
What does it have in it?
organic herbs, including rosemary,
Marjoram.
Thyme, savory, sage.
Sage, nice. All right, so we're gonna stir this up and make sure, and I like to use this tool. Sometimes I use my dough scraper. If you don't have one, I like to use a spatula like this to get everything off the sides. And we're gonna stir it until it comes together. I've been finding lately, because I've been thinking that sometimes when I make my dough, it's a little bit dry, I've been trying to mix it more and more in the bowl, and that actually kind of helps to start the kneading process. Because as we're mixing it like this, we're starting to push those proteins together that make the gluten. We're getting everything distributed. So if you can spend a little extra time mixing and stirring in your bowl before you take it out, I think that's just fine. Kind of helps everything to come together. So I'm just going to switch to my dough scraper. Again, you don't need a dough scraper. You can continue to use a spatula, but I have it, so I'm just going to use it. And go around and around. So one of the nice things about doing these videos is that we make practice recipes. So we've had a couple of batches of focaccia this week. And one thing about focaccia that's really great is you can eat it so many different ways. You can eat it plain, just come out of the oven. You can put pizza sauce on it. What else have we been doing with it? We dip it in olive oil.
You and Dad and Katie put like cheese or something.
Yes, I mixed some goat cheese and honey together, and I put that on my focaccia. It was so good. All right, so I've got pretty much everything out off the sides. I'm gonna put a little flour down. I'm gonna take this out, and we're gonna knead it. Thank you. All right, so just a reminder on kneading. We're gonna put a little flour on our hands. We're gonna line our dough up. We start at the point that's away from us. We fold it towards us with the palm of our hand. We push it away, fingers out of the way, pick it up and give it a quarter turn and go again. Fold, push, turn. And we're just gonna keep going. Yeah, you can. Wanna put a little flour on your hands? Let me just kind of sweep these little bits out of the way. Push with the heel of your hand. Perfect. Excellent. So right now we don't need to be adding more flour to our dough. It's not sticky enough. It's still staying nice and dry. Your dough is going to be a little bit sticky, kind of like the sides of tape. If you feel it's trying to stick to you, we can add a little more flour. What do you think, Gracie?
It's a little sticky.
All right, once you lift it up, and put a little bit up for your hands. Okay. Again, when we're kneading, we want to use the least amount of flour possible to get the job done. We'd rather have it be a little too wet than too dry. But it's all going to taste good no matter what. All right. Want to put your hands on a little bit of flour? Don't be afraid of getting dough on your hands. That's just part of baking. Here, let me step in. Let me see, give you a hand. So we're gonna come in. We can take our spatula or our dough scraper. We're gonna pick it up. We're just gonna sort of move all of this out of the way. We'll put a little more flour down. Do you wanna keep going? Do you want me to do it?
You can do it.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna knead this until it's smooth. It's gonna be kind of soft and marshmallowy. Again, if you want to at some point, just stop and give it a 5-minute bench rest and come back and knead it again. That'll be great. But for these video purposes, we're just going to keep going. So when you get it to where you want it, it's going to be soft, it's going to be smooth, and it's going to have a bounce. So when you press against the dough, it's going to bounce back. So it's going to go into a lightly oiled bowl. We can use the bowl we had. And it's going to be covered. And it's going to rest for 90 minutes. Okay, again, just a quiet, sort of nice, warm place for it to rest. If you used a packet of yeast instead of a tablespoon of yeast, it might take a little bit longer. When we talk about 90 minutes, that is an estimate. That's about how long we think it's going to take. What you're really looking for is it to double in size. So that's really the key, all right? So let's say we put that aside, put this aside, we clean everything up, and then 90 minutes later, there's your dough.
Oh, it smells really
It does smell so good. All right, so it's nice and puffy. It's twice the size. Oh, look, we can do a side-by-side comparison. What it was before, it doesn't bounce. It has a nice softness to it. So when we made dough a few weeks ago, we put flour down to shape our dough. With this, with focaccia, I'm actually gonna put a little bit of olive oil down because we're gonna put it in pans with olive oil. So our pan choices are, you have lots of choices. We can use 2 8-inch round pans, 2 9-inch round pans. You can use a square pan. You can use a, if you have a wide cookie sheet that has a good lip on it, you can make a nice flat one. Any shape is gonna be fine. I'm gonna use these 2 pans. I'm gonna put just a little bit of oil in the bottom. And spread them around. I just use my hands to do this because I'm gonna put oil on my hands anyway to handle my dough. All right, let's put these over here. Sometimes I think I need a bigger counter. All right, we're gonna take this out. We're gonna gently deflate it, so it means I'm just gonna press it down. We're gonna divide it in half. Again, we're just gonna estimate. So we're gonna shape these into rounds. So again, we're just gonna kind of make this into a round shape. I'm gonna put that down over there to rest a moment. I'm just tucking this under, making it a little bit into a ball. I'll put that there to rest. Now I'm just gonna press this out a little bit with my hand. And I can also use a little bit of gravity to help me. Just holding it on the edges, letting the weight of it push it out. So here's our circular pan. I'm gonna put it in here and I'm gonna press it down. And I have found as I've been making it this week, if I kind of take my hands, I can kind of pull it along to the sides. Keep it in there. All right, so there's one. And here's the other one. It's a little bit sticky. Do you see how it's just like kind of like this, the sticky side of a tape? And that's great. That's just fine. I don't need to do anything to it. All right. So we're going to cover these, and these are going to rest for 45 minutes. All right, so it's been 45 minutes, so we're coming back to our dough. Before we deal with this though, I wanna point out that in the recipe we made together, I forgot to add 2 tablespoons of oil. So that's why it's so important to read your recipe, but I got a little distracted with teaching, so I apologize for that. So there are 2 tablespoons of oil in this recipe. I'll do something with that dough later. This is the dough I made earlier to demo. This has all the right ingredients in it. I'm gonna take the covers off. You can see how they're nice and puffy. So one thing that's fun about focaccia is has a sort of a characteristic poked or dimpled top. And you do that by taking your fingers and poking the top of your dough, just like that, to make some hills and valleys. Do you wanna do one or? With clean hands, as always. All right. So then we're just gonna take a little bit of olive oil and brush it on top. You can use garlic oil if you want. You can use any kind of oil. And then if you wanted to sprinkle some more herbs on top, you could. If you have some coarse salt, so we have some coarse sea salt, you can sprinkle a little bit of that on top. We have found that a little goes a long way, so you don't need to do too much. I'm not deflating it, I'm just gently brushing it. And then do you want salt on both or just one, do you think? Or
Let's do one.
just one? All right, so I'm just putting a little bit on. I think table salt from your salt shaker is gonna be too fine. I don't know if that's gonna work all that well, so you want like coarse salt. So these are gonna go into a 425-degree oven for 30 minutes and then we'll take them out. So we took our focaccia out of the oven. I checked it at a little after 20 minutes and this didn't take a whole 30 minutes, so I took them out a little bit earlier, but you can see they look nice and brown. And we were talking earlier in another episode about how to know when your bread is done. So one thing I can do is I can take it out and has a nice thump to it. All right, when you take your bread out of the oven, you can let it sit for a moment in the pan, but then you want to take it out of the pan to cool off outside, because otherwise the heat and the warmth in there will make steam and it will condense and you'll get your bread will be soggy. So these are out, they look beautiful. You can eat these warm. They're so versatile. So with your focaccia, you can eat it just as it is. You can slice it and dip it in marinara sauce. You can put it in olive oil. You can toast it in the morning and have it for breakfast. You can slice it and use it for sandwiches. It's great. So I hope that you've really enjoyed it. I hope you get a chance to try this recipe. It's been great baking with you today, and we'll be back next week. Thank you so much and happy baking.